said for a long time that, politics are polarised and things can go one way or the other. You don't have to automatically go to the left because, clearly that's not the case in a number of countries across Europe, and still the battle's going on in the States, etc. It's not going away. And I think what dominates really are the two things: the deep, deep crisis. It's the era of catastrophe, isn't it? I mean, that's what we've been talking about. Alex Tillicos and people talk about it. It's catastrophe capitalism on the one hand. On the other, here we're beginning to see, we have seen the class struggle is back. I think we characterise it as the end of the system not being challenged in this country. Of course, beyond that, we've mentioned Sudan, Sri Lanka, all other places where workers in conditions quite different from here have risen up and shaken the whole system, haven't they? In Sri Lanka, and they're burning down ministers' houses and that. So it's, I'd like to see it here actually. There's a climate issue there perhaps, but it's the scale of it. The scale of the crisis is very deep, but the response has to be equally large, and from below. It can't come from the top because it's failed. Corbyn was the best chance that the left in Britain's had, really, of any kind of reformist change, and we saw what happened. That's the end of it, as far as I'm concerned. So to anybody in the Labour Party, join us, or you're fucked, basically. You've got no chance of doing anything. We wanted a single MP deselected. That was the thing that struck in my mind. Not one single MP was deselected in the years of Corbyn. And that was concentrating on that as an internal way of changing Labour. No, it didn't happen. So therefore the left is very weak. So the only hope for them, and I know a lot of good comrades who argue with all the time, come and join us, and they do get involved with things, but really, unless you make the fundamental break, and it's revolution, not reform, then I think that will always hold us back. Now, I'm a child of the '68 revolution. 68 was such a magnificent year. Not just France, but you talk about the Viet Cong and the US, etc. in Vietnam. The whole year. The Black Power salute in the Mexico Olympics. What else was it? There was the civil rights movement in Delhi, in Ireland. Civil rights movement in the States. Mass student revolt in Mexico. It's a fantastic year, and that, I think, for a generation showed actually the world can be changed. And interestingly, we had a meeting the other week on Sudan, and the same arguments are going on there as was in '68. And of course, in '68, 10 million workers on strike, but ultimately the politics of the then Communist Party, a reformist view of the world, held it back, and the movement didn't go as far as it should and could have gone. And that's what we're on with now in Sudan. And then, you have to remember, in France, it was the students that started it, and it was an argument about whether they could basically sleep together and have sex in dormitories. That's what it's about. That was the main demand. But it's like the demand in Iran now, where it's about women saying, we're not going to put up with this shit anymore, and it's spread across the country. In Sri Lanka, you've got, for years, this horrible civil war going on with the Tamils. Suddenly, Tamils and the Sinhalese workers are on the same side, fighting back against the system. So, that's what changes, and that's why class struggle is so important. It's key. That's where ideas change. When people start taking action, go on a demonstration, that's part of it, but actually going on strike and, a sustained level of struggle, that's when people's ideas change. The ideas about racism, sexism, all those things fall away. And that's when the potential for a real revolutionary future becomes possible. But that's what, let's face it, we haven't had that many strikes, have we? It wasn't quite like 10 million workers in France, but we've had a few one-day strikes, really. But the potential there, I think, has ignited people's imagination that actually we can do something. Because mostly when you talk about revolution, people say, it's a great idea, but how are we going to do it? How's it going to happen? And then suddenly you get a little taste of it, and people have found it very popular. Mick Lynch becomes a national hero overnight, even though we're probably going to have an argument with him somewhere down the line about accepting a deal which won't be as much as they can get, I suspect. And that's why, you know, the class struggle is so vital for change. And yeah, Labour, you know, always put nation state before class, and that's why they call for national unity. You know, all the horrors of the Queen dying and the funeral and all that, which the union leaders bought into, I'm afraid to say, which was terrible. It was a big mistake. But, you know, we have other arguments to fight over now. So, in terms of democracy, yeah, we want mass democracy. That's what Marx talked about. We want democracy in everything. And I can only relate it to, I was on strike for 4 months once. And we had a meeting every single day to thrash out what we were doing. And we did it every single day. We produced our own newspaper. We went out collecting. But every day we had a meeting, started, are we going to stay out and strike? What are we going to do? And all that, every single day. That's just one strike in 91 that showed that. I mean, and then you get movements that really can change everything. Because in the 70s, when I was first on strike, journalists had never been on strike before. Teachers were on strike for the first time. Civil servants. The whole thing was changed. The whole climate changed because of workers in the, particularly like the Upper Clyde shipyards. You may have heard of. There's a fantastic play about that, by the way. It's doing a tour, and that led to 200 occupations across Britain. Suddenly the mood changed from defeats to victories, and then the 2 miners' strikes got rid of the Heath government, etc. But the problem then was that the Communist Party, again, put all its efforts into getting Labour elected. And Labour then brought in the social contract and suffocated the strikes that were going on, and the movement went backwards. So these are all lessons. We as a party are the memory of the class, and you have to remember these things. They can't, you know, strikes in the 70s can happen again, not identical to them, things have changed, but the potential is there. And I think that's what we have to always remember, because you know, at the moment, the crisis the Tories are in is so deep. The argument really is whether there should be more state intervention or let it be a free market. That's what Trust represented. They're not having that. They don't know which way to go. None of them have got an answer. But we've got an answer. Our side has got an answer. But we have to fight for those ideas to be a revolutionary way of fighting for reforms and fighting back, but also then fighting ultimately for a complete change in society. I think I've covered everything. Stalinism, why does that come back? You'd think, we were talking about it, weren't we? We've got a pamphlet out. Why is that necessary? Because young people are drawn to certain ideas and looking for some way, you know, an alternative. And we have to be, as the European revolutionary socialists, be there in the arguments to say, look, this is the way forward. And if we can start to shape the next generation, the next 68 generation, that's what it is really, I think, for lots of young people, the radicalisation is going on, then we learn the lessons and we can win.